Canada is a multicultural society. Newcomers have been showing up here for hundreds and hundreds of years with their own languages and traditions and cultures and foods and beliefs. For some cultures, managing money is a little bit more complex, right? The Muslim community is one example. We're going to talk a bit about that today. In fact, talk about halal financing, halal financial products and services. Mazil is a firm that focuses on just these things, and its founder joins us now. His name is Dr. Mohamad Sawwaf. He joins us from Toronto. Hello there.
Hi, Bruce. Thanks for having me.
So, how would you frame for a non-Muslim person the word halal, the idea of halal in the context of money? Many of us have seen it at the deli counter, and you can buy the halal hot dogs. That is obviously a very simple example of something that is much more, much richer and more foundational with regards to your faith.
Yeah, so when you think of the term halal, just think of it as meaning permissible, right? And so why is a halal hot dog or halal chicken any different? It's the process that it went through before getting to the supermarket or on your table, meaning, that animal was slaughtered in a very humane way, the blood was drained, an imam blessed it in the meantime. And so halal finance is no different from the perspective of there is a product structure that needs to be adhered to, along with the documentation set that needs to be, let's call it languaged in a certain way in order for it to comply.
You have a PhD in Islamic finance. This is a topic area that you know very, very well. Why did you decide to found this firm instead of just agitating to the banks to develop products and services that could serve your community in the way that you need?
Because previous to my academic journey, I worked for those banks. And the opportunity continually kept arising with my involvement in the community. I would talk to those executives. They all knew of what halal banking or Islamic banking was. They didn't really understand how big of an opportunity it was. And if you throw in the Canadian context of every industry is quite oligopolistic, everyone's comfortable. Nobody likes competition. Nobody likes innovation. We're actually quite an anti-innovative society. And so I basically said that with my academic and professional background, I want to actually put theory into practice. And that's where Mazil comes into play.
You talk about the opportunity. We're what, 40 million Canadians? How big is the demographic for whom this would be a resonant and relevant idea?
So I always look at it as it's relevant for everyone, no different than you like to eat a halal chicken-based shawarma,
Yes, I
right?
do.
And it has nothing to do with the halalness. It just tastes really good. But when you think about the sourcing of it, you will then align yourself with, oh, it is ethical and maybe it's organic. And so halal banking, yes, it focuses on the 2 million Muslims that we have today, according to Census Canada 2021, which is about 5% of the population. And it's not only the fastest growing demographic, but the second largest religious base in Canada. So by 2030, we're actually expecting that population to grow from 2 million to 3 million. But that doesn't stop people like you who may not adhere to the Islamic faith from participating in these banking products. And if we go back to my research, you can go to the United Kingdom and they have Islamic banks sitting side by side conventional banks. And in fact, upwards of 40% of those Islamic banks have non-Muslim clientele. And when you survey them and you say, hey, what was the reason why you approached this bank or got a product from this bank? They may say, you know what, it ethically aligns with my morals and values. Maybe the product was better. It was more transparent. Maybe, it's this notion of I don't want to go with the big banks, right? I'm anti-establishment, right? Or better pricing. So these are some of the sentiments that we hear in terms of why it not only obviously attracts the Muslim community, but it also attracts the broader ethical community.
Can you give me some examples of what halal looks like in a financial services context? So around, I'm thinking about the products that you would get at any bank on the street corner. You could get a mortgage, you could get a credit card, you could get a personal loan. How does that fit within this context?
So mortgage is the easiest one. There's multiple structures, but I'll give you one of the simplest ones, which is called a cost plus, or in the Arabic language, a murabaha. And so essentially what happens is us as a financial institution, we would purchase the house that you wanted to buy on your behalf. So for example, if you found a house or a condo for $500,000, you would come into Menzel and say, "Hey guys, I entered into this agreement of purchase and sale for this condo for 500,000. I'd like to do it in a halal manner." So we would then step in and say, "Okay, Bruce, we'll buy this for 500,000, and then we're going to resell it back to you for $750,000, which is an underlying implicit profit rate of 5% per year for the next 25 years." And so you take that 750, divide it by 300 payments, which equals 25 years, and you get a fixed payment of $2,500 a month. And so here, the element of a trade-based or asset-backed transaction allows you to fulfill the tenets of halal banking or halal finance.
Apples to apples, what would you observe from a cost perspective? So, for those who don't have as strong a faith-based value around that structure, how big a delta is there on an equivalent interest rate?
So the delta is only there due to the cost of capital that we have access to, right? So I'll give you I'll extend on that thought. If you were to go to the bank, right, and they had the same cost of capital and they introduced a halal mortgage, it should be priced exactly the same because of their economies of scale, their operational efficiency, all of that stuff. A small shop like us, we are priced higher than the market, anywhere between 1% to 2%. And that's because the way we access capital and the cost of that capital that our investors require is higher, and hence then we have to add our premium in order for us to turn the lights on. And so that's all passed down to the consumer. Long term, we expect halal mortgages to be competitively priced to their conventional counterparts. No different than when you go to a grocery store today, even Costco, you can buy halal chicken or non-halal chicken for the exact same price.
Right. There's been a
But
coming
that took 40
together.
years to develop.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Which is not the same, for example, on organic cauliflower. It remains
Yeah.
a whole price category in and of itself. So
Exactly.
mortgages is one. How does this work in investing, for example?
Yeah, so in investing, it really comes down to two sets of filters. So you have the qualitative and then, of course, the quantitative. The qualitative is easy. We've probably heard of it. You want to stay away from sin activities, or, you call them sin stocks. So any company that involves themselves that is looked at as bad for society, whether it be alcohol, tobacco, weapons manufacturing, pork and pork byproducts, entertainment, gambling,
Did
casinos,
you
that kind
say
of stuff.
cork?
Pork.
Pork. I thought you said cork, pork and pork byproducts. Got it. Okay. That makes
Yes.
more sense.
Yes. Yeah. So you then filter for that and you say, okay, now I have a bunch of companies that don't involve themselves in those types of business activities. Well, now you actually have to open up the balance sheets and say, well, what is the strength of this company, especially with respect to debt to equity, right? So there's only a certain level of debt that would be acceptable under the Islamic finance standard. So less than 1/3 of the company needs to be in from a debt to equity ratio. You also have to have less than 5% impermissible income. So, for example, let's say you wanted to purchase Hilton hotel stock, right?
Mm.
Hilton Hotel as a business is fine. But some of their restaurants do provide alcohol and pork byproducts. If those activities are less than 5% of its overall net income, it's still permissible to invest in.
Mm.
So it's not an all or nothing thing. There is flexibility and range within those categories.
How do you think about credit score? And I ask because for a traditional mortgage
Mm.
lender, it's like a critical thing. You look at their reputation. Did they pay on time on their credit card the 5 years prior to this mortgage application? You're talking about a demographic that may not have a credit card or may have been reticent to transact in that way, given that it is counter to their faith. How do you resolve for that?
Yeah, so I would say, previous to maybe 5 years ago, where there weren't any credit building products, when you think about this community, they're debt averse, right? So they're not going to take a credit card that has an interest rate attached to it, or they're not going to take a loan that has an interest rate attached to it that then gives them history on an Equifax or TransUnion, report. Today, there's a lot of prepaid cards that build your credit. So we do, we have partnerships with some institutions that allow for that. Now you can build your credit score via rent. And so we push these, there's a big education and awareness program on our end to basically educate the community and say, this is how you can build a credit score, because at the end of the day, in order for you to get a mortgage, you still need a minimum of 600 or 680, right? And so we will work with those clients to build that credit score, even though they have no debt on the books, right? Like they're cash-based, let's call it community, in order for them to build that report and history so that they can qualify for a mortgage with us.
Maybe a tough question, but given your experience thus far on the mortgage front, are there any insights that you can glean from the behavior of your clients? I was going to say borrowers, but that wouldn't be accurate. Your clients versus the market writ large.
Yeah, so I would say that our community, based on the data set that we have, has stronger financial balance sheets. So we've noticed larger than average down payments. So 45% is the average down payment on our portfolio, and it actually equates to about $400,000, right? So imagine, like, this is a saver community. They don't know how to invest because they don't know what products are suitable for them. They're sitting in cash, and their mentality is, how do I continually save in order to buy this house in cash? But their savings rate hasn't kept up with the growth rate of the real estate market, which has been exponential, as you know. And so there's always been that financing gap that we fulfill. Very strong household incomes. And, we've never even had one missed payment over the last 5 years, right? So
Wow.
Zero default, zero arrears, with a willingness, right, to pay a higher premium, right? So it is affecting more of their cash flow. We've seen even the psychological behavior of actually wanting to get out of their current conventional mortgage, pay the penalties and fees, and that's a lower priced mortgage, then get into a new one that's higher priced with more fees to even get in. And so, that behavior really shows us that there's a willingness, right, to participate in this product. And there's a strong adherence to ensure that they make their payments on time.
Really interesting stuff. Thank you very much for joining us to talk about Mazil. We really appreciate it.
Thanks very much, Bruce, for having me. Really appreciate it.
The Islamic Bank is called Mazil. Joining us was its founder and CEO, Dr. Mohamad Sawwaf.